Welcome to the slippery slope. I'm Ziggy Kozicki, and today we're going to look at immigration and inclusion. I'm going to spend some time with you looking at some of the myths about immigrants, and we're going to go through these together. What I want to do is talk to you about the fact that the U.S. has not passed major immigration reform legislation since the Reagan administration. And we still use standards that were developed in the 1960s to determine who we permit into the United States. The system's outdated, and it cannot meet the needs of our vibrant, growing 21st century economy. Pro-growth immigration reform can raise the pace of our economic growth in this country, increase our per capita GDP, and reduce the deficit here in the United States. So, what I want to do is talk to you about the 6 myths about immigrants, but after we're done, I want you to watch some video clips of people that we interviewed in Lafayette Park in Washington, D.C. So here's the first myth. Immigrants are taking over. Immigrants actually account for about 13.5% of the total U.S. population, which is in line with historic norms. Remember, we are a country of immigrants. People came here from all over the world. So immigration is not such an unusual part of what we are. There are parts of the world where you have homogeneous populations where almost, Japan, for instance, is a good example, where almost everybody in Japan has been there for generations. So we have to think about these myths. So let's look at the second myth here. Immigrants are all Mexican. 30% of immigrants come from Asia, and currently more are coming from China than from Mexico. So many of the immigrants that are coming into this country are not Mexican. They're actually coming from all over the world. And so we have to recognize that this demagoguery about making it look like the Mexicans are coming here to take over our country isn't true. We have to be more realistic about them as our neighbors. We've had a long positive history with them. How about this myth? Immigrants don't work. 72.5% of immigrants believe hard work is how you succeed in America, and they're responsible for half of the total labor force growth over the last decade. That's what's made America great. What's made America great is immigrants, an infusion of new people. In fact, research and evidence shows that first-generation Americans, that's children of immigrants, are the most productive people in the workforce, and usually are people who contribute most to a vibrant social life, arts, music, all of those kinds of things. So when we think about this country and why it's so beautiful and wonderful and growing, it's because we're always bringing in new people and ideas. Let's look at the next myths. Immigrants don't help the economy. Well, immigrants-owned businesses with employees have about 11 people working for them. And so when we think about immigrants who come here, many of them come here to set up, to take advantage of the capitalist model we have. They employ other people. And in some cases, thousands of people. You know, I think of a company like Apple, for instance, or some of these other companies that have set up in this country. So think about that when we look at these myths. How about the next myths? Immigrants take American jobs. 7.6 of the immigrants were self-employed compared to 5.6 of native-born Americans, and they founded more than 40% of Fortune 500 companies. Let that sink in for a minute. Almost half of the Fortune 500 companies in the United States were founded by immigrants. So if you think about this great capitalist model with all of this growth on Wall Street and across America, 40% of it is a result of immigrants who've come here with the desire and the motivation to do something and make our economy strong. I bet you many of you have relatives who have worked in companies or for organizations that were started by immigrants. Here's another myth. Immigrants aren't educated. Recent immigrants are more likely to have college degrees than native-born Americans and are more likely to have advanced degrees. So think about this next time you go to a healthcare provider. You're likely to run into a foreign-born national who is now providing health care to you. And you're going to see that in the high-tech industry with computers or other kinds of things. And so more and more we have to realize in a global economy, the United States, which makes up about 5% of the world's population, is going to intersect and interact with many immigrants. And that's good. That's good for our economy. That's how we grow the American dream here, by bringing those people in. And so these are the kind of myths we have to debunk. We have to move away from these kinds of belief systems because they don't really help anybody. What they really contribute to is kind of a racist attitude towards these people, which doesn't serve anybody. We're better than that. We all were immigrants at one time. In fact, my parents immigrated here after World War II. I'm an immigrant. We look around the world and we bring in the best people. And many of them are people that are your neighbors now. So I'd like you to watch and listen from people who were at this Families Belong Together March, which took place in Washington, D.C., June 30th, 2018, at Lafayette Park, which is right across from the White House. When the people got done, they walked down Pennsylvania Avenue to the Capitol. There was about a mile-long march of people from all over the United States who came for a specific day, specific purpose, and there were marches all across the United States. So let's watch this video clip together. Thank you for joining me for the Slippery Slope, and I hope this has given you something to think about. You have a good day, and make America great again. We're right in the middle of a protest here in Washington, D.C., protesting policies that were established by the White House to separate families, immigrant families. And why this is important is because it chips away at this whole idea of social justice and about treating people humanely. You start with immigrants, and then where does it stop? People here are protesting. They're taking a stand against a fascist kind of thinking that has taken over in our country. And this is the kind of protest that, as you can see, involves many average Americans who can see what is going wrong here and are willing to come here by the thousands to protest. They're here because they care. They care about family, they care about family values, they care about all the things that matter to most Americans. And they're willing to make a statement right now for everybody to look at. You need to take a look around at what America is really built on. It's built on immigrants. It's built on people being tolerant and accepting others. It's built on the rule of law. Yeah, there's a way to deal with the immigrant population. It isn't building a wall, it's building bridges to them, and also working out ways in which we can have a comprehensive immigration policy. Congress needs to pass a comprehensive immigration policy.
This public policy affects public life. The laws on the books were written by people, So I hope that the people who come in next and us people on the ground are able to push to make sure that those laws are more humane.
I'm happy I'm here. I'm happy I'm able to be here. I think it's come down to people getting in the street and saying we're not going to put up with this. That's what my sign says.
Yeah, it's time to stand and fight for what's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I haven't had a stress-free day since November of 2016. And I just can't. I respect the legal process, and I think the investigation of the Russian collusion is ongoing, and I support it 100%, even though Americans that I don't understand are trying their best to undermine it and sabotage it and outlaw it, and I can't tolerate it.
When did this happen?
I'm 80 years old, and I was born in Texas. I grew up in this country, and I've never had a time in all that time where I felt as afraid and scared as I do now. That somehow we've a man has gotten elected into an office that he doesn't belong in at all because he cannot tell the truth. Somehow, the most valuable characteristic of a leader is integrity. In my book, it always has been for all American people that I know. And it seems to be out the window. This guy has thrown it out the window. He doesn't have an ounce of integrity in his bones.
Okay, let's talk about.
Well, this is, I think, the moral issue of our time. I mean, this isn't just about corruption at the highest levels of government, although that exists. This is now when it's really personally hurting small, helpless children. I'm a grandmother, and I just find, I can't even sleep at night, you know, thinking about what's going on and what's happened with our country. So, you know, it's just, and not only the fact that they did it, but they were so unbelievably careless that they didn't figure out a good way to get the kids back. You know, they just did it without any thought, and it just goes to showing how cruel they are. Cruel and uncaring about children, and probably uncaring about anybody except themselves. So it felt very important to be out here today.
What do I think about all this? I think it's awesome, man. I mean, I love it. It's great feels powerful, you know? Feels free. Feels like we're exercising freedom. It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
The one thing that we can do is vote. I don't think prayers do it. And vote the bastards out. I'm sorry about that, but vote them out.
I would not miss the opportunity to be here today because as the grandchild of immigrants who fled countries where they were being oppressed and came here seeking asylum, I can't imagine closing the door to someone else who comes here looking for the same kind of assistance and shelter. I mean, that's what built this country. That's what made America great. And to truly make America great again, we have to open our hands and open our doors and open our hearts to the people who need the help that they're asking for.
Okay, let's get it signed.
I think today is one day in a very long struggle. We're going to see it develop in the coming months, I think, with the upcoming primaries that remain, and then, of course, the general election after that in November. And through all of that, days like today give us motivation, I think, to continue to contact our representatives, to organize locally. So this is an encouraging day, but this whole thing, I think, is more of a movement than a moment, you know? This is a moment within a movement, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Patriotism is not racism, and we have a racist president who defines that as patriotism. And, you know, we're all immigrants. It's completely un-Christian what he's done. He pretends it is, and we're just very upset about it.
I am third-generation Japanese American, and for us what that means, especially in these times, is that my parents and grandparents lost everything during World War II. Even though my parents were citizens, they were born here, they were incarcerated in the camps, and we've said never again, and in fact it's happening again. And then this week with the Supreme Court, Roberts, I think he threw out the Korematsu issue at the same time that he said that this illegal, the border issue still stands, right? Disallowing Muslims to, you know, certain countries to start. So, you know, replaced one with another. So I think you can't clear your conscience in one way and then, you know, just continue on in the same way.
From my perspective, well, it's from everyone's perspective that's here. We're together and we're trying to make one voice. Thousands of people gathering together to make one voice that we won't tolerate what's going on here in America. We have a president who is insensitive, he's heartless, he doesn't really see the magnitude of the damage that he's doing worldwide, not just in America, but around the world. So I think we have enough people here, thank God, who have enough knowledge and intelligence to know right from wrong and what direction this country is going if we don't do something about it. So we're here because we want to make our voice heard, because we don't stand for the immigration, what he's doing with immigration, and especially taking the children away from their parents. Every child needs a parent. Every parent needs their children, no matter if it's in the United States or any country around the world. And this is why we have this sign.
We have lost our humanity, I feel, as a nation and in our leadership. And it's terrible, the example that we're now setting for the world.
These ribbons on your flag.
Those are all the names of people I am marching for. They cannot be here. My mother, my friend with MS, my daughter who has to work on Saturdays, the daughter with toddlers, all sorts of people who have asked me to carry their names. Everybody else here may not have a visible reminder like that, but all of us here, every single one of us is marching for many people, not just themselves. So keep that in mind, please.
We're all immigrants. We came here as immigrants. You can't be an illegal immigrant on stolen land. So we all have a right to be here.